Nolan Vance ran a company the same way a general commanded a battlefield: precise, ruthless, and with no room for mistakes. His name meant power in boardrooms across the country. Employees whispered his name in corridors, never daring to meet. His eyes, the only person who dared stand near him every day, was Ella Morris. Ella had started as a junior assistant 2 years ago. Somewhere along the way, she became indispensable. She memorized his schedule, his coffee preference, the way he liked reports delivered, all without him asking. But what she never dared admit, not even to herself, was how she memorized the way his eyes softened when he looked at the city skyline, or how his voice dropped whenever he said her name. She buried her heart beneath professionalism. Even when Nolan's sharp words cut deeper than intended, even when he threw sarcastic comments during meetings, even when she heard about the latest rumor Nolan being seen at a gala with a fashion influencer clinging to his arm, Ella told herself it was business. It wasn't hers. But today, her heart cracked. The morning began with a storm, not outside but inside the office. A contract fell through, a client withdrew. Nolan's temper boiled. He walked past her desk, dropping a file without a word, papers scattered. Ella bent to pick them up, her hands trembling as she overheard 2 executives whispering. "He's flying out with that model next week," one said. "Figures. She's his type. Tall, flawless, cold as ice," the other replied. Ella bit her lip until it almost bled. She stood, placed the file neatly on his desk, and left quietly for the restroom. When she returned, Nolan didn't even glance up. By noon, he snapped at her over a typo in a memo. A single word misplaced, in front of the entire boardroom. "Next time, maybe you should pay attention, before embarrassing both of us," he said flatly. Ella swallowed hard, nodded, didn't speak. The moment the meeting ended, she walked back to her desk, typed a simple sentence on her screen. "Dear Mr. Vance, I hereby tender my resignation effective immediately." She printed it, signed it, hands steady, heartbreaking. She walked toward his office. Knocked once. Nolan looked up, a flash of surprise crossing his face before disappearing. "What is it?" His tone was clipped. Ella stepped in, placed the letter on his desk. "I'm resigning," she whispered. He stared at the letter, then at her. His eyes flicked over her trembling hands, the slight shimmer in her eyes. "You're serious?" His voice dropped low. Ella nodded. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Ella turned, her hand reaching for the door handle. Click. The soft sound echoed in the silence. Nolan's hand pressed gently against the door. "You're not leaving," he said quietly. Ella froze. "Please, I can't do this anymore." Nolan's voice softened, something raw slipping through. "Not like this, not without knowing the truth." She turned slowly, meeting his eyes. For the first time since she met him, his walls cracked. Ella stared at Nolan, her heart racing, her back pressed against the closed office door. The sharp scent of cedar and leather hung in the air, his signature, the kind of scent that had once calmed her during long nights of work. Now, it coiled around her like a quiet storm. Nolan stepped closer, his face unreadable, though his eyes held something Ella had never seen before, a rawness that shook her more than his sharp words ever had. "I can't let you leave," his voice dropped. "Not when I've been lying to both of us." Ella shook her head. "This isn't about a mistake or an apology. I've given everything. And I can't keep breaking just because you choose to act like I don't exist when it suits you."
Alan's
jaw tightened, but his eyes didn't leave hers. "You do exist. It's more than you know." Ella's laugh came soft and bitter. Don't make this harder." Nolan moved past his desk, stopping only when the space between them was a breath. "I've been a coward." Ella blinked. "What? You think I'm cold because I don't feel? That I pushed you because I didn't care? That I let rumors spin because it meant nothing to me?" He shook his head, his voice low. "None of that is true." She hugged herself, trying to keep her heart from splintering again. "You think saying this now changes the last 2 years?" "It changes everything if you let it." Ella lifted her chin. "Why would you ever think I'd believe you?" Nolan looked down for a moment before, meeting her gaze again. "Because it's the truth. I've been afraid." The words felt foreign coming from him. The CEO who never flinched in boardrooms. The man who faced ruthless competitors with a steel heart. Now, admitting fear, afraid of what? Ella whispered. Nolan exhaled slowly. You, Ella's lips parted, a sharp breath escaping. Nolan ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare crack in his polished armor. You changed everything the moment you walked into this office. Your presence, it undid me. I felt it the first time you corrected my schedule and told me without blinking that I'd overbooked myself. Everyone else avoids me, you didn't. And somewhere between you handing me my coffee and standing beside me through the worst of my business storms, I realized you weren't just an assistant. Ella's heart thudded painfully. And yet you treated me like one? Nolan's expression darkened with regret. I thought if I kept you at a distance, I could control it, control myself. I couldn't risk the rumors, the gossip, the way. People would twist everything we did. And if I'm honest, I didn't want to risk you seeing the man beneath all this. He gestured around the office, the sleek walls, the towering windows, the empire he'd built. So instead, you broke me bit by bit, Ella said quietly. Nolan took a slow step forward. No, I broke myself. For a moment, silence hung. Between them, the kind that was heavy with things unspoken, Nolan's voice dropped softer. You're the first person who ever saw me as more than a name on a door. And I've been terrified of losing you, because you saw past the CEO. Ella swallowed. I don't know if I can believe this. Let me show you, Nolan said quietly. Before Ella could speak, he moved toward his desk drawer, pulled out a thin leather folder and handed it to her with hesitant fingers. Ella opened it. Inside were copies of emails, notes, small details all about her. A letter of commendation he'd written but never sent. Memos he'd drafted defending her against board members who'd criticized her work, ones she never knew about. Approvals he'd signed on her behalf when she'd been too swamped to notice. Doda stared. You kept all this? Nolan nodded. I watched over you, protected you in ways I thought wouldn't show, because I couldn't. I didn't know how. To say it, Ella's throat tightened, and the rumors. She asked barely a whisper. Nolan's mouth curved into something almost bitter. Fabricated. The influencer was a client's niece. A photo taken at a fundraising event. Nothing more. I never even spoke to her beyond a handshake. You let people think it was real. Nolan's jaw set. Because letting them believe, it meant protecting you. If anyone thought you mattered to me more than professionally, they'd question every success you had. Every promotion. Thought I was doing the right thing. Ella felt her heart twist, a mix of relief and ache. You didn't trust me enough to let me decide, she said softly. Nolan stepped closer again. I didn't trust myself. They stood in silence again, his words hovering in the air like fragile glass. Then, without a word, Nolan reached for the resignation letter on his desk. His fingers tore it clean in two. Ella stared. You're not leaving, he said firmly. Because you're not just my assistant, Ella. You're the only person I want beside me. Ella felt something crack inside her, not from pain, but from the weight lifting off. You can't just say this because I'm walking away, she whispered. I'm saying this because I should have said it every day, Nolan replied. His voice low, his gaze never leaving hers. Ella searched his face, looking for the mask he always wore, but it wasn't there. He was raw, exposed, vulnerable, and maybe so was she. Her lips trembled. I don't know if I can just forget everything, Nolan's hand reached out, not grabbing, not forcing, just waiting, palm open. Then let me start from here. With the truth, with us. Ella stared at his hand for a long heartbeat. Then slowly, she placed hers into his. Nolan's fingers closed around hers, firm but gentle, like a silent promise. And in that quiet office, the walls between them began to fall. They sat together on the leather couch near the window, the city lights casting a soft glow around them. Nolan leaned back, hands clasped. Speaking with a raw honesty Ella never thought she'd hear. He told her about his father, a man who valued power over people, who taught him that emotions were liabilities. How Nolan built his empire by never letting anyone close. Then you came along, Nolan murmured. And you made every rule I lived by feel wrong. Ella listened, feeling her anger melt into something softer. Understanding. I wanted to be better around you, but I didn't know how. His voice was low, so I kept pushing you away, hoping I'd stop feeling this. Ella met his eyes. And now, Nolan turned toward her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Now, I'm done pretending, done pushing. Ella felt her heart flutter, a fragile thing awakening after being locked away for too long. I'm scared. She admitted. Nolan nodded. Me too. They sat in that quiet confession, the city outside humming with life. His two hearts finally found a rhythm neither expected. Hours passed unnoticed. Nolan spoke of the moments Ella never saw, how he'd canceled meetings to make sure she ate lunch, how he defended her decisions in boardrooms, how he noticed every detail, every silent struggle she endured. Ella realized then she hadn't been invisible. She'd been everything. As the night deepened, Nolan stood, walked to his desk, and pulled open another drawer. He returned with a small box, a simple thing, wrapped in deep blue. I was going to give this to you when you got promoted, he said softly. I planned it months ago, but I kept waiting, making excuses. Ella opened the box. Inside was a delicate bracelet, simple silver chain with a charm shaped like a key. Nolan's voice dropped low. Because you're the only one who ever unlocked anything real in me. Ella felt her eyes sting. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, Nolan added, his voice a whisper. But if there's even a chance, I want to try. No walls. No masks. Ella looked up, searching his face. Just us? She asked quietly. Nolan nodded. Just us. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Ella smiled, a soft, real smile that reached her eyes. Then maybe, she whispered, fastening the bracelet around her wrist. We can start over. Nolan reached for her hand again, his fingers lacing with hers. Starting now, he said softly. They sat together as the dawn painted the city in soft gold. Two hearts beginning again, not as CEO and assistant, but as two people who finally saw each other, fully and furly. When Ella Morris walked into the office the next morning, the quiet hum of keyboards and soft murmurs seemed sharper, louder, more pointed. Eyes followed her, some curious, some narrowed in suspicion, a few flickering with silent judgment. Ella held her head high, but inside her nerves twisted like a silent storm. It wasn't because of the stares or the whispers that rippled the moment she passed. It was because of the man walking 3 steps. Behind her, Nolan Vance. He didn't hide in his office today. He didn't walk ahead of her like the untouchable CEO. He walked with her, beside her, and that alone turned heads. They stopped by the elevator, waiting for the doors to slide open. A pair of junior executives stole glances, whispering behind a stack of reports. Ella caught snippets. Since when does he walking with her? Nolan, standing close enough for Ella to feel the heat of his presence, leaned slightly toward her. His voice stayed low. We're making headlines already. Ella fought a smile. Apparently. Are you regretting it? Ella glanced at him, the soft curve of his mouth, the quiet warmth in his eyes. No, she whispered. No, his fingers brushed against hers, subtle and fleeting. Just before the elevator arrived, they entered together. The first change came. In the morning meeting, the large glass conference room had always been a battlefield of egos. Department heads fought for Nolan's approval. Executives braced for his sharp comments. No one dared cross him, but today Nolan sat at the head of the table. Ella took her usual seat beside him, except it wasn't usual anymore. Nolan looked at her before the meeting started and asked, voice even, what's your take on the marketing proposal? The room fell silent. Ella opened the folder in front of her, heartbeat steady, and offered her analysis clear, direct, confident. Nolan listened, nodded, and when she finished, he said simply, we'll go with that. Gasps were stifled behind professional faces. No challenge, no sarcasm. Just agreement. The meeting moved on, but the ripple didn't fade. By noon, the whispers turned into hushed conversations across the office floors. He actually listened to her. Did you see the way he looked at her? Maybe she's got something on him. Ella tried not to let it get to her. Nolan didn't seem to care. If anything, he seemed lighter. Later that afternoon, When Ella passed by the break room, she caught a group of assistants mid-conversation. Bet she used her. Looks, how else would she get promoted? Always knew she was a climber, playing the long game. Ella felt a sting, sharper than she expected. She turned, about to walk away, when a familiar voice broke through the chatter. You might want to stop before you embarrass yourselves. It was Nolan standing at the doorway, arms crossed, his eyes cool but firm. The assistants froze. Nolan's gaze didn't waver. Miss Morris is where she is because she's earned it. Every position, every success. Now, if you can't respect that, you're in the wrong company. His words hit like a silent earthquake. The room fell into stunned silence. Nolan didn't say another word. He simply turned, caught Ella's eyes for a brief second, and walked away. Ella felt something swell inside her, a fierce, quiet pride. The days turned into weeks in the world. Watched Nolan didn't stop being a CEO. He still commanded rooms, still made hard calls, still expected perfection. But something shifted. He took lunch breaks with Ella. He asked for her opinion in meetings and waited for her answer. He smiled more, not wide, not showy, but real. The staff watched as their CEO softened, not weaker, not changed. Beyond recognition, just REALER. One afternoon, after a particularly intense client negotiation, Nolan invited Ella for a walk. Not to a private office, not a formal debrief. A walk down the street. Into a small coffee shop neither had ever visited. They sat in a quiet corner, away from eyes, with simple mugs between them. You've changed, Ella said softly, stirring her coffee. Nolan lifted a brow. Should I be worried? Ella smiled. It's a good change. Nolan reached across the table, took her hand gently. You've changed me. Ella felt warmth bloom in her chest. I don't want to hide, Nolan added. But if this makes your life hard, Ella shook her head. Let them talk. Let them wonder. It's worth it. Nolan leaned forward, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. So are you. Their bond deepened, in and out of the office. They learned the rhythm of each other's days, shared moments between meetings, exchanged glances across boardrooms. Nolan stopped pretending. She was just his assistant. And Ella stopped pretending. She was just a woman who worked beside him. The promotion came 3 weeks. Later, Nolan called a department meeting something he rarely did in person. Ella stood beside him as he spoke. Today, I'm appointing Miss Morris as Chief of Staff, Nolan announced. She's earned this by her work, her vision, and her loyalty. No mention of personal ties, no hints of favoritism. The staff clapped, some slow, some hesitant, most respectful. Ella met Nolan's eyes, silent thank you passing between them. He gave a slight nod, his expression proud but calm. After the meeting, Ella walked back to her desk, her new office waiting nearby, when a familiar face approached. Leon Carver. Head of finance known for his sharp tongue and sharper opinions, so Leon said, folding his arms. You finally climbed to the top. Ella met his gaze, her stance steady. I've worked for everything I have, Leon smirked. We'll see how long it lasts when the novelty wears off. Before Ella could reply, a voice cut through the air. It'll last as long as this company does, because Miss Morris is here to stay. Nolan, he stood a few steps away, his expression unreadable, but his voice carried a weight no one challenged. Leon gave a short nod and walked off. Nolan turned to Ella. Don't have to fight alone. Ella smiled. I'm not afraid. Nolan gave a faint smile back. Good, neither am I. They faced the world together. The whispers, the doubts, the expectations, and every day. They grew stronger. One evening, long after most of the staff had gone, Ella sat at her desk. Reviewing a report, Nolan appeared in the doorway. Come. With me? He said quietly. Ella set her papers down and followed him. He led her up to the rooftop, a place she'd never been. The city stretched out before them. Lights flickering against the night sky. Nolan stood beside her, hands in his pockets, his expression soft. I used to come up here when things got too loud, he said. When I needed to remind myself why I built all this. Ella turned to him. And now Nolan met her gaze. Nowie, come up here because it reminds me of you. Ella's heart caught. Nolan stepped closer. You remind me there's more too. Life than walls and deals. More than names on office doors. Ella felt a swell of emotion. You remind me that love isn't weakness. Nolan took her hands, holding them firmly. You remind me that love is the only strength that matters. Ella leaned in, resting her forehead against his. They stood there, quiet, wrapped in the city's hum and each other's presence. In that moment, it wasn't CEO and assistant. It wasn't boss and employee. It was just them. Two hearts beating in rhythm. There's no walls between them. They didn't need words. The world could watch. They had each other. And that was everything. It started as a quiet evening. Ella Morris sat by the large glass window of Nolan Vance's office, her eyes tracing the soft glow of the city lights. The day had been long meetings, strategy sessions, endless reports. Yet the fatigue didn't weigh her down because now everything was different. She wasn't the assistant who moved in his shadow. She wasn't the woman hiding her heart behind professionalism. She was the partner walking beside him. Nolan finished typing something on his tablet, his expression thoughtful. When he looked up, their eyes met across the room. You're still here, he said softly, a faint smile pulling at his lips. Ella's heart warmed. You locked the door, remember? Nolan chuckled, a rare, soft sound that still caught her off guard. He stood, walking over to her, the soft rustle of his footsteps echoing in the quiet. I meant here with me, he said as he reached for her hand. Ella's fingers curled gently around his. I'm here. He stood in silence, letting the weight of that truth settle between them. Nolan's thumb brushed over her knuckles. I almost let you go. Ella squeezed his hand. You didn't. Nolan looked down, his expression softening. No, I won't. Not now. Not ever. They spent the next few weeks living in a rhythm neither of them had expected. Nolan balanced boardrooms with moments of quiet. Honesty. Ella balanced leadership with open vulnerability. They worked together, building strategies, handling crises, making decisions side by side. What started as whispers in the office slowly shifted. Staff began to see the way Nolan valued Ella's insight. How he leaned on her in meetings, sought her opinions before making major calls. The gossip faded. Replaced by something else? Respect, Ella learned. Nolan wasn't just the CEO who built empires. He was a man who stayed late to help. Junior staff with tough projects, he was a leader who listened. He was the partner who waited for her outside. Her office every evening, ready to walk her to the elevator with a simple touch to her hand. They became a team, not just in business, but in life. One Friday evening, as the office cleared and city lights flickered alive, Nolan asked Ella to join him on a walk. They stepped into the cool air. Leaving behind the glass towers of corporate power, the city buzzed around them. But their world felt quietly separate, a rhythm only they shared. They walked without speaking until they reached a small park. Tucked between buildings, Nolan guided her to a bench beneath a tall oak. They sat, hands entwined, hearts steady. After a long pause, Nolan spoke. I want this every day. With you, Ella turned, searching his face. Nolan, he met her gaze, his eyes steady. This life, it's empty without you. It always was. I just didn't know how empty until you almost left. Ella felt her heart swell. Nolan continued. You've seen every part of me. The good, the bad, the sides even I didn't like. And you stayed. Ella leaned closer. Because I saw the man no one else saw. Nolan's hand lifted, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And now I want the world to know. You're not just the officer, not just the company. Everyone. Elle blinked. What do you mean? Nolan pulled a small box from his coat pocket. Ella's breath caught. He opened it slowly inside. Simple silver band, elegant and timeless. I want you beside me. Not just as my partner in business, but in life. Marry me, Ella. The words hung between them, soft, steady. Sure, Ella stared at the ring, her heart racing. Are you sure? She whispered. Nolan met her eyes. Never been more sure. Of anything. Tears blurred her vision, but she smiled. Yes, Ella whispered. Yes. Nolan slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand steady. They leaned into each other, forehead to forehead, their hearts beating in quiet unison. That night wasn't about grand declarations or public displays. It was about them, too. People who broke down walls and built something real. The following weeks unfolded in quiet. Joy Nolan didn't make grand announcements. There were no press releases. He introduced Ella as his fiancée at a board meeting with simple words and a calm confidence. "This is Ella. She's not just my chief of staff. She's my partner in every way." The room fell silent. Then, slowly, as people nodded, they accepted, respected. It wasn't overnight, but real respect never is. Ella grew into her role, confident, steady, sure. Nolan grew beside her, open, trusting, unafraid. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Nolan and Ella sat on the rooftop of their office building. The city stretched out before them, sea of lights and silent stories. Nolan leaned back on his hands, watching the sky. "Do you ever wonder how different things would be if you'd walked away that night?" he asked softly. Ella looked at him, her heart calm. "No," she said gently. "Because we're here now. That's all that matters." Nolan turned, his eyes meeting hers. "I never thought I'd find this with anyone, especially not with the woman I tried so hard to push away." Ella smiled, her hand finding his. "Sometimes we need to break before we learn how to be whole." Nolan chuckled softly. "You make me whole, Ella." But they sat in that quiet truth, letting it settle between them. Months passed. Their partnership in business and life grew stronger. Together, they led the company through challenges, successes, and quiet victories. Together, they built a future neither had dared dream. On a quiet Sunday morning, under soft sunlight, and with only close friends and staff present, Nolan and Ella stood in a small garden, exchanging vows. There were no grand speeches, just simple words. Honest hearts. Nolan looked at her as he spoke. "I almost let you go. But now, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how much you mean to me." Ella smiled through quiet tears. "You once said I unlocked something in you. But you unlocked something in me too, the courage to believe in love. In us." They sealed their vows with a soft kiss. Not for show, not for the world, just for them. As they walked down the garden path, hands entwined, the people around them didn't see a CEO and his assistant. They saw two hearts who fought for each other and won. And as the sun bathed the world in golden light, Nolan leaned closer, his words soft against Ella's ear. "You're staying with me, forever."
Ow.
Ella smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "Always." And that was the beginning not of an office romance, but of a life built on love, respect, and a bond no one could break.